Ever since roadways were first created, nature has been persistent in challenging those systems. Historically, road maintenance programs focused on removing all vegetation along the roadside, driven primarily by safety issues. Beginning in the 1950s, maintenance crews started using truck-mounted sprayers because it was more efficient and cost-effective. One of the greatest challenges we are facing today is finding alternatives to pesticides. From coast to coast, state and local agencies are facing increasing public pressure and new laws that require them to reduce pesticide applications. Developing a sensible integrated vegetation management plan can help us in pulling together a feasible program. Terry Reynolds, the County Road Superintendent, explains the challenges facing the road crew.
Some of the challenges we face along the roads with vegetation control is the amount of vegetation there is in the first place, the very different types. There's French broom, very invasive plants. We got Himalaya blackberries, and it's nearly impossible to keep up with the control of these plants. And our main concern is with public safety. We're trying to keep the brush and the vegetation from encroaching into the roadway, and we want to make the road safe for the public. And it's quite a challenge these days with the budget cuts we have. There's numerous cuts in personnel over the past couple of years, and we're doing the best we can with the mowers we have right now, and we're always looking for options to try different techniques for the control, such as a lot of the organic herbicides that are out there now. And it's just the funding issue, I think, is our main problem at this point. And I'm hoping there'll be funding available to do a little more research, maybe some more grants on finding various methods to control it aside from mowing. Mowing is very costly, very time consuming. It takes 4 to 5 personnel every day out mowing. If we can find another way to control the vegetation, it'd be wonderful. You know, some type of organic, something good for the environment, yet kind of keeps the weeds off the road edge, and help us control that quite a bit. So we're hoping that there's something out there for us.
In 2000, the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors adopted an integrated pest management policy with the goal of eliminating the use of pesticides on county property. A department advisory group was formed with members that include staff from local agencies and representatives from the public. The group meets regularly to discuss pest control issues and provides recommendations on alternatives. Josh Riley, the Integrated Pest Management Coordinator, conducts quarterly meetings and reports to the board annually.
The purpose for establishing the Integrated Pest Management Departmental Advisory Group was to provide technical expertise and guidance to departments attempting to implement the county's integrated pest management policy. The county's integrated pest management policy requires that all departments in the county use integrated pest management techniques in trying to combat pests. In other words, we need to monitor, we need to evaluate, we need to take a broader, more scientific view of the organisms that are causing damage or potential public health harm to county employees and county residents, and take into account all kinds of alternatives in controlling those pest problems. We can't simply find a pesticide off the shelf and apply it wherever we find a pest problem. We're now required under the county's IPM policy to take a longer-term view.
In December 2006, the county was awarded grant funding from the State Water Resources Control Board for the purpose of developing an integrated vegetation management plan. The objectives of the program are to reduce sediment and pesticide pollution in county road maintenance operations. One of the highest priorities for the program is finding an alternative to truck-mounted spraying of toxic herbicides. And one of the greatest obstacles to achieving this goal is the rapid expansion of non-native invasive plants. Whether it is in the stream or near it, native vegetation is an extremely important part of healthy natural habitat. Native riparian plants directly impact the entire structure of the biological food web and the ability of the stream ecosystem to survive. Santa Cruz County manages over 600 miles of roads, and 60 miles are within 150 feet of these riparian areas. A vegetation specialist, Casey Stuman with URS, was hired by the county to develop the Integrated Vegetation Management Plan. The program targeted the areas near these wetland habitats, and this was accomplished by mapping and prioritizing problem roadside areas. Priority projects were established by using a matrix that addressed road safety issues and environmental concerns. The projects were then selected after visiting numerous sites that fit within the program parameters. Casey explains how the new program will assist in roadside vegetation maintenance.
I'm a senior ecologist and project manager that's been working with the County of Santa Cruz Department of Public Works to develop an integrated vegetation management program that's focused on managing pest plants and invasive species and overall roadside management within 150 feet of perennial waters throughout the county.
After the board approved the plan, Casey coordinated with the crews to install the various projects throughout the county.
We're in the process of implementing 7 herbicide reduction projects and 3 sediment reduction projects through a grant that was funded by the State Water Quality Control Board.
My name's Jason Pearson. I'm an environmental scientist with URS Corporation, and today we're here on Ramport Road. This is a county herbicide reduction project. We're working here along Harkins Slough to basically remove non-native acacia trees and Italian thistle and poison hemlock. Today we're actually cutting the acacia and then stump spraying. And hand pulling poison hemlock and brush cutting Italian thistle and piling it so that the seed doesn't spread. Part of the reason why we chose this project is because it is a relatively isolated invasive species patch, so there's not much of a threat of spread to surrounding areas. Most of the weeds are contained within the road right-of-way, so we can effectively remove the species and not have much resprout. We will come back, however, at later times and do some spot check and spray and removal of any regrowth or seeds that have come back. This riparian area does have quite a bit of native species growing in, so part of the reason this is a good location to do this project is that there is so many native species like mugwort, blackberry, some small oaks are coming in, there's lots of willows and stinging nettles. There's a lot of species here that will take the opportunity to regrow and fill in where the non-natives were before. So I think we'll see a good response here.
Today we're up on Bonnie Doon Road, and we have a project here on the lower mile of Bonnie Doon Road from the junction of Highway 1 up to the base of the hill basically. And the road here is very close to the west branch of Lydell Creek, which is a steelhead fishery, and there's really nice riparian habitat here with red alder and coffeeberry and wax myrtle, all kinds of riparian forest trees. And we're working with the county crews and the Community Action Board crews. The county crew has already come in and mowed either side of the road, which they periodically do here because there's a lot of Conium maculatum or poison hemlock and Funiculum vulgare fennel. There's also wild radish and mustard and other non-native invasive plants that crowd out along the road edge. So we're mowing all that. We had that mowed all back, and today the Community Action Board crews are cleaning out some of the mowed plant material from some of the ditches so that we're putting in place wood chips in here, some redwood wood chips, which we feel will last at least a couple years along the road edge. The chips will last longer and break down slower, and they're often used on restoration projects that are in or near streams. And the goal here was to get about a 3 to 5 foot wide layer of wood chips at least 6 inches deep or more along the sections of road where there's room for the chips and where the invasives have been mowed, the hemlock, the fennel, and to just provide a cover of mulch and chips that will cover over any seeds or plants that would resprout and basically prevent them from growing back up in those areas. The basic objective of the project is to prevent them from having to come back and mow or spray herbicide along the Steelhead Creek, and to provide some longer term control, because previously this area needed to be either mowed or sprayed up to 3 times a year because it's so wet and moist down in this canyon that the fennel and the hemlock come back really fast.
Granite Creek Road was an excellent candidate for an herbicide reduction project because historically it had been sprayed on an annual basis. Granite Creek is a perennial stream that supports steelhead trout and is a tributary to Branciforte Creek and San Lorenzo River.
Granite Creek Road was a restorable place. It had high quality redwood canyon forest and riparian corridor within maybe 15 to 50 feet of Granite Creek, which is a steelhead bearing stream, most of the way up through the project area. And we basically did 2.1 miles of Granite Creek Road from its junction with Branciforte on the downstream side almost up to basically to the Scotts Valley city limits on the uphill side. And we targeted some pampas grass, French broom, Himalaya berry, Italian thistle, and one of the main things we went after was silver acacia.
Casey worked with the Public Works and Community Action Board crews and focused on hand removal of non-native plants.
In that first phase, we worked with 2 different crews, supervising 2 different crews. The first it was a very intensive phase, pulling out a lot of volume of organic matter. The first phase, we pulled out 200 adult silver acacia trees with the Public Works tree crew, and we had them apply a 50-50% solution immediately to the vascular cambium of the cut stumps right after they were cut. And so that was what the Public Works crew was focused on. And then the cab crews were working on removing Himalaya berry, pampas grass, the thistles that were sprouting up, and French broom.
The tree crews focused on chainsaw removal of silver acacia and applied diluted herbicide directly to stumps after cutting the trees. This method kept herbicide from directly entering into the creek. The trees were removed by using this one-time focused application.
We've targeted really the invasives along that road. We've made it much better for the residents and for visibility and safety for the road, especially at that junction with Branciforte and other places along the road. And it's going to significantly reduce the amount of management on the year-to-year basis from now on, because we hit it so hard up front. This is going to be a long-term solution, and it's also actually going to provide control of some of the invasives out there, and it has.
So in implementing the first phase of the Ocean Street Extension project, one of the target invasives we went after was English ivy, and during this first phase we went along the riparian corridor there along the San Lorenzo River, and we cut the vines and pulled as much of the English ivy out of the canopy and off of the trunks of sycamores and bays and box elders and other riparian trees there. So once the English ivy vines climb up into the canopy, they weight down and crowd out the canopy and basically suffocate the tree, preventing photosynthesis and basically overweighting the tree. And those vines will die after they've been cut. And we're going to go back to the second phase and work on removing more of the English ivy vines from the floor along the banks to prevent them from reinfesting the trees again. And we'll also work on follow-up on the Cape ivy and finish up with the Public Works crew working on, there's a few more silver acacia to remove and stump spray, and then also a few more jubata grass to do some follow-up with. So there'll be a second phase later in the wintertime, and that's the goal of that project.
Organic herbicides were also applied to noxious weeds in the project area to compare it with commercial varieties. Casey describes other pesticide reduction projects that are along streams. These projects include Kings Creek Road, China Grade Road, and Highland Way.
We specifically picked out places where there were steelhead streams and the county crews had been using herbicide previously. One of the areas we targeted was Kings Creek Road, Upper Kings Creek Road in Boulder Creek, and it drains into the San Lorenzo River. It's a nice redwood forest, and there's not a lot of invasives up there. There was significant amounts of French broom, and we worked with the Community Action Board Community Restoration Program, their crews out there, as well as Public Works. So far we've completed basically the upper 1.5 miles of the road, controlling French broom, pulling out all the adult broom. So the China Grade Herbicide Reduction Project was along Boulder Creek, which is up Big Basin, and it's one of the main tributaries to the San Lorenzo River. It also has steelhead. And we basically started from where the China Grade Road enters Big Basin State Park and worked down from there. There was very little broom at the very top, but it got the populations got higher and higher, and they were focused right along the immediate roadside. So that's why we picked that project area, because it had a really high native component to compete with the broom once we kind of brought the adult broom under control. The Highland Way Herbicide Reduction Project was one of the first we got going on. Again, the target was French broom, and we essentially worked on a 2-mile stretch of road that's along the upper watershed of Soquel Creek. It has resident rainbow trout. Further downstream, it's steelhead. So it's a really nice, almost park-like setting out there.
Historically, vegetation along these roadways was sprayed annually, and no long-term control of target pest plants was achieved. The roads that are most heavily sprayed tend to be the ones near water, since vegetation grows heavier in these areas. Application by truck-mounted sprayer was more likely to enter these sensitive riparian habitats. Also, annual spraying was not providing control of or preventing the spread of non-native invasive plants. Under the pilot projects, these plants were targeted in a more effective manner, which decreased the spread of the pest species. At Highland Way, a green flaming technique was tested to control broom. This is a very effective weed control method if applied to newly developed sprouts under damp conditions.
We green flamed seedlings that had come back up since February. There was, thousands of seedlings under the adults after we had pulled. So, and that was very effective. In 2 days we went up there and treated that over 2 miles either side of the road, and we brought water tanks with us just for safety.
Additionally, there was a mowing demonstration of French broom. Mowing should occur when the plant is flowering and before viable seeds are formed. Control of broom is most successful when mowing is performed at least 3 times a year. The biggest threat to endangered steelhead and coho salmon today is the loss and degradation of fish habitat, which can happen when too much sediment enters the system. Native riparian plants not only stabilize the channel banks and prevent erosion, they improve water quality conditions. An important component to the Integrated Vegetation Management Plan was to reduce sediment from entering creeks. This will be beneficial to fisheries habitat since clean gravel is crucial for spawning. The county identified and installed several key projects for sediment reduction, which included Eureka Canyon Road on Corralitos Creek, Glenwood Drive on Bean Creek, and Upper East Zayante Road on Zayante Creek. Casey explains how the projects were implemented.
The Eureka Canyon Road sediment reduction project is adjacent to Corralitos Creek, which is a steelhead fishery, and this was a area that had chronic sediment issues, a large pullout with a drain directly to the creek in the upper watershed, and we regraded it so that it drained properly towards the creek, and then installed hundreds of native rushes and creeping ryegrass, Lamus triticioides, in a bioswale there. We also transplanted in some sword fern and lady fern from the adjacent riparian corridor, and it was all within a staked straw wattle that we put along the perimeter so that water could drain under the wattle, but it additionally helped capture any sediment that was moving off the pole. I've gone and checked on it this spring, and all the rock's still in place. The bioswale worked perfectly. All the plants are alive, and you can see that water during this first winter ran right down the swale, across the pullout and into the swale, and right down the swale through all the plants before it went into the drain that drains to the creek. So it was very effective and fairly cheap and affordable in terms of time and energy and materials. At Glenwood Drive on Bean Creek, milepost 2.02, there was it had been a road repair where basically the road had slid into the creek. We went in there with the Public Works crew, and this was kind of a preventive sediment reduction project where we had them remove a lot of the top of the slope and reset it to less of a grade so that it wasn't as steep in terms of the slope above the creek. And we staked straw wattle above and below the graded area after it was all regraded to a significantly less % grade slope, and planted over 200 Juncus effusus or Pacific rush and Juncus patens, another common rush, and creeping ryegrass and other annual native grasses that we got from Native Revival Nursery. We also planted about 7 coast redwood saplings that we got from Central Coast Wilds along the lower base of the slope, and all of those plants have established. We were out there last week and it's doing really well. All the wattle's in place. The rock that we put on top of the pullout and we had graded that so that it would drain properly, is all still in place. So there were 2 aspects to the Zayante Creek project. There was actually a pullout that was draining a bunch of muddy, clay-laden water to the creek through a drain from the pullout, and then just upstream from that was a roadside ditch that was in the process of deeply incising and carrying it had been carrying and continuing to carry large volumes of soil down cutting into the creek from this roadside ditch. And we basically went in there and dropped gabion-sized rock into the roadside ditch, kind of reset the grade, and that was to slow the flow coming through that area, to stabilize that slope so that it didn't incise anymore, and also to then catch any soil and kind of back it up that was coming down through that system. And we planted rushes and creeping ryegrass and other natives that we got from Central Coast Wilds in between the gabion, up that drainage ditch, and along the sides of it too, to catch water coming off of the road. We had calculated the amount of sediment reduction for the pre and post project conditions, and we estimated it was a 97% reduction in sediment.
The goal of these projects was to reduce stormwater runoff that carried sediment from a roadside pullout into the creeks. Water was collecting on the turnouts due to the high clay content in the soil and compaction from vehicles. As a result, the soil remained muddy, and vehicles using the turnout caused large tire ruts and excessive erosion. During storms, water running off the turnout carried the loose sediment directly into adjacent streams. Wet clay soils were loaded in a dump truck and disposed of at the maintenance yard to dry out. A layer of 4 to 6 inch rock was installed to stabilize the muddy soil. Another layer of 1.5 inch drain rock was placed over the base layer to level out the surface and provide drainage for runoff. Straw wattles were staked along the edge of the turnout to create a buffer area near the drainage swale. This buffer area will function as a sediment filter strip. The wattles reduce runoff velocities and collect sediment, allowing water to percolate through the straw. With these erosion control measures in place, the expected soil loss should be minimal. Native grasses, rushes, and ferns were planted throughout the entire buffer area to assist in filtering soil from the runoff. This technique was successful at this site, and the plants had more than a 95% survival rate. We face a difficult task of maintaining our roads while protecting the environment. The challenge is working with our community to ensure public safety while reducing the use of toxic herbicides. John Presley, the Director of Public Works, knows how important the new maintenance program will be in assisting our crews.
The County of Santa Cruz is very pleased to be involved with a program that reduces herbicides and reduces erosion out on our county roadways. We're very active in protecting the environment and working with the community to reduce any impacts to the environment. So we are looking forward to implementing a number of programs over the next few years that I think are going to be substantial improvements for the environment.
We still have much to learn about integrated vegetation management, and through projects like these, we will continually improve our methods, which will give us guidance for future projects. Santa Cruz County is pleased to be involved in pulling together a successful program that can be used as an example for other counties.